Hello, I'm Scott DiAgostino, and welcome to Movies. Right now, very few movies are being released due to the Hunger Games coming out. Since I couldn't care less about the Hunger Games and the fact I'd rather watch a Twilight marathon than the first one again, I didn't see it, and I probably never will. So instead, I saw a good indie movie called Dallas Buyers Club. It stars Matthew McConaughey as a Texan man who discovers he has AIDS. McConaughey lost over 50 pounds for the role, and I have a feeling that he's going to get an Oscar nomination and he deserves it. Also Oscar worthy is Jared Leto as a sidekick slash drag queen. He lost 30 pounds for the role and he has AIDS too. They have great chemistry together and I think you'll like this movie. Grade B+. As you may have heard, actor Paul Walker died. To celebrate his life, I made a list of the 5 best movies that he made that didn't have Fast in the title. Number 5 is 8 Below, which is a Disney movie he made about a sled dog team that gets separated from their owner. It's something that your kids would like, and apparently Walker only did it so he could have a movie that his daughter could watch. Number 4 is Varsity Blues. He had a small role as a football player with an incredibly awesome name. He doesn't have much screen time, but it's obvious from this role why he was cast in The Fast and the Furious. Number 3 is Running Scared. In this movie, Walker plays a small-town mafia man who is tasked with hiding a gun that was used to kill a dirty cop. Unfortunately, his next-door neighbor's son steals it so he can kill his abusive dad, and he goes on the run with it, and Walker has to chase him down. It's a very dark and disturbing movie, but it's very well made. Number 2 is Flags of Our Fathers. Walker had a small role as a soldier in this Clint Eastwood directed movie. It's actually better than the movie I have at number 1, but his role isn't as big as the one in number 1. And number 1 is Pleasantville. In this movie, he plays a high school basketball player who like the rest of the town is stuck in black and white. And one of the funniest moments of the movie is Reese Witherspoon's character takes him to make out point, and they do something that couldn't be shown in a 50s TV show. Now that we've done a positive aspect of movies, we're going to take on the negatives. Last week I talked about the 10 2014 movies I'm anticipating the most. Now here's a list of the 10 that I think will suck the most. Number 10 is basically every horror movie that's coming out in January and February. If a movie's coming out in January and February, there's a 99% chance it's going to be awful. And there are several awful-looking horror movies coming out during these 2 months. There's Devil's Due, which is basically Rosemary's Baby if it was a crappy found footage movie. I, Frankenstein, which features Aaron Eckhart slumming in a movie that was supposed to come out 2 years ago. And Vampire Academy. I hate vampires so much. Number 9 is a tie between Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, and Paranormal Activity 5. I enjoyed the first 3 Paranormal Activities, but the 4th one was such an awful movie that it killed any interest I had with the franchise. They both look like cheap knockoffs, and the only reason I'll see them is for Razzie voting. Number 8 is another tie between that crappy Hercules movie starring Kellen Lutz that's coming out next year and that crappy Tarzan movie starring Kellen Lutz that comes out next year. Kellen Lutz found himself the star of 2 awful-looking movies. If you don't know who that is, he's a vampire from Twilight whose makeup didn't match the rest of his skin. He's an awful actor, and I'll be glad when both of these movies flop and we can get rid of them. Number 7 is Resident Evil 6. I absolutely hated the first 5 Resident Evil movies, and I don't think this will be any different. One positive though, apparently this might be the last one, God willing. Number 6 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, they're not aliens anymore and they're still mutants, but still, Michael Bay and Joseph Leiby's men are still involved, and Megan Fox is probably going to be miscast as April O'Neil. Why did they cast Megan Fox? Sure, she's hot, but she looks nothing like her. Also, William Fichtner will probably lower himself even further than he did in The Lone Ranger with his role as Shredder. Number 5 is the RoboCop remake that I memorably got angry about a few months ago. Now, RoboCop is an archetypal 80s movie that featured great satire, action, and great characters. And if the remake trailer is any indication, it's going to be played completely straight. It's going to be a PG-13 crap fest, and they neutered all the great female characters. Also, why does he have a human hand? Robbers will just shoot that because it'll look obvious. Why? Number 4 is a movie that might not be coming out next year, but it could, so I'm counting it. Number 4 is The Human Centipede 3. The first 2 Human Centipede movies were more boring than they were gross, and considering how gross they were, that should tell you how boring they are. This one is apparently going to star Eric Roberts. Yes, the same Eric Roberts who was in The Dark Knight. I would say Oh How the Mighty Has Fallen, but he was in a movie called A Talking Cat, so I think this might actually be a step up for him. Number 3 is another movie that might not be coming out next year, but I'm still counting it. Atlas Shrugged Part 3, Who is John Galt? Now, I absolutely hate Atlas Shrugged and Ayn Rand. Twilight's better written than any of her books, and yes, I'm being serious. The first 2 Atlas Shrugged movies were so awful that they actually recast it after the first one. I have a feeling that the third one will have a new cast too. Although apparently they used a Kickstarter to try and get funds, even though that goes against Ayn Rand's principles. And I have a feeling that this one might finally sweep the Razzies as intended. Number 2, Blended, starring Adam Sandler. That's all I need to say. Now, number 1, I know what you're thinking. I hate Adam Sandler, and the fact that he's not in the number 1 movie must be a bad sign about next year. Our number 1 movie is Best Night Ever, a parody of Bridesmaids from the horrific monsters who made Epic movie. Now, when you make a good spoof movie, you should take a serious movie and make it funny. If you take a comedy and make it funny, you're just being redundant, which is exactly what this movie's gonna be. Now, there is one bright side to this movie. Salzberg's last movie, The Starving Game, appeared in only 5 theaters, and due to it coming out on video on demand the same day as theaters, it was ineligible for the Razzies, which means I didn't have to see it. Hopefully this will use the same release scheme so I don't have to see it as well. I'm Scott D'Agostino, and I'll see you next year at the movies.